By the members of the audience, I'm not going to read the resume of your biography, and I will directly invite Mireya Agüero de Corrales. Is it correct? Wait.
No, but that's fine.
Okay, fine. And to deliver her lecture. Thank you.
Just a little bit I don't know if you were here before, just to say that I'm the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Honduras. I am a career diplomat. I've been in the service for 30 years. I'm married, I have 4 children, and I'm very glad to be here. Gracias al Instituto de Diplomacia Cultural por invitarme esta tarde. Estaría encantada de hablar en español, pero no los asusto. I'm going to speak in English. The Greek philosopher Plato said that wise men speak because they have something to say, and fools because they have to say something. Most of the times I find myself in front of an audience. I have to tell you, I don't know if I am one or the other. But I don't have a problem to confess that I have felt foolish many times in my life, many, many times. And one recurrent recollection of that feeling of foolishness comes from my first intercultural experiences. When I was very young, and I was traveling, and nobody knew where Honduras was. So, I've decided to make an introduction to Honduras. I think at this point you've realized we have made a shift. We're not talking about human rights anymore. We're talking about soft power and the Honduras perspective. So Honduras, I'm not going to read all those numbers, you can read them. It's located in the heart of the Mesoamerican region. A region bearing 40% of the world's freshwater resources. Honduras has a territory where varied ecosystems converge, defining the country as environmentally, geographically, and culturally diverse. We have over 650 kilometers of Caribbean coastline, beautiful beaches. Just in this Berlin weather, just imagine that. 100,000 mangrove hectares in the Gulf of Fonseca in the Pacific Ocean. 2 million hectares of fertile valleys with high productive potential. 3 million hectares of productive forest. More than 100 protected areas, 27% of Honduran territory. Our weather is tropical, and average temperatures, again for the Berlin weather, 18 to 27 degrees Celsius. We're one of the countries with most irregular topography in the planet. And our climate system makes water our most valuable natural resource. In terms of water availability, every Honduran could have 6 times more water than any citizen in Europe. We are also a very cultural diverse country. The 2009 Honduras Cultural Census identified more than 1,000 cultural events spread over 200 municipalities of 18 departments that make up our national geography. Copan, the cradle of the Mayan civilization, is in Honduras, the most important Mayan city in the eastern region of the Mayan world, a UNESCO heritage site and considered one of the finest outdoors museums in the world. And I have there also the Rio Plátano Biosphere Reserve, a UNESCO Natural Heritage Site since 1980 in the Mosquito Coast of Honduras, a rainforest reserve with at least 3,000 mosquitoes living in their traditional way. Honduras is a very young country. It concentrates great possibilities and potential in the following main productive sectors: energy, agribusiness, service maquila, infrastructure and telecommunications, tourism, forestry, and carbon credits. So in short, these are some of our assets. Assets that, since I'm here, I'm going to call assets in terms of soft power. Broadly speaking, soft resources are the assets that produce attraction. As Professor Nye says, seduction is always more effective than coercion. And many values like democracy, human rights, and individual opportunities are deeply seductive. And indeed, in Honduras, we have been working on those values. For the past 30 years, we have had democratically elected governments. We have growing governance capabilities. We are in a process of decentralization. We have more spaces for civil demands on accountability and transparency. And we've come a long way in gender equality, as you heard me before. I've shared already some of our cultural and historical assets. We have beautiful cultural and natural areas, colonial and pre-Columbian monuments. We're working on democracy. We're working on human rights. But again, have these assets provided Honduras with the capacity to achieve certain political goals? Do we have the ability to promote economic growth through them? The potential to influence other international actors, is it? Or it's not there? As I said before, or as you read before probably, we have some setbacks and lessons learned from the political values line. 30 years of democracy. But in 2009, we had a delicate political crisis. And for that, we were automatically isolated from the international community. Also, in the past 5 years, Central America has become a drug corridor. And as a result, we have experienced an increase of criminal activity caused by the use of Honduran territory for the transshipment of illicit drugs to the North American market. Sometimes, Honduras is at the Washington Post, El País de España, or the Sydney Times at the same week. And not precisely to cover our national strategy for interdiction of drugs, or our prevention programs, or our institutional building efforts in combat of crime with many friends from the international community. All these papers just want to give the public what it wants, the gruesome face of criminality. Despite of being a small country, nearly half Hondurans have TVs or access to internet. Though I would doubt if many understand the dynamics of global information environment and its power to deliver critical and influential content that would shape perception and form opinions all over the world. This afternoon, when I was interviewed, 2 out of the 3 questions were about violence in Honduras. And I answered them, but I regret. I have a lot more to say than talk about violence in Honduras. So even if some factors are as geography, as population density, as market potential, as natural resources and growing administrative capacities provide us with some comparative advantages within our region, we are still lacking enough information technology to conduct an efficient soft power campaign. So I pointed out one of our difficulties: our lack of resources for strategic communication. And that's even more costly if you consider we would have to deliver diverse messages to diverse targets. Another difficulty in articulating this Honduras perspective on soft power is the context of elusive concept of culture. I don't know about every language, but in Spanish, cultura tiene muchos significados. Culture has many meanings. One thing I have clear: for Hondurans, culture has to do with our founding story, be that a myth, an inaccurate historical account, or just a tradition that is meaningful. But I think many countries need that founding story. And of course, our founding story is tied with colonization. Honduras was discovered in 1502 and conquered by the Spaniards. And our history line reveals that we have been a colony longer than an independent nation. A Honduran 20th century president was asked, "Mr. President, when precisely in time have we got rid of the colonizadores?" And he answered, "Hey, have they left?" We have come a long way to find the right path for our modernization effort as a state. It is not easy to discriminate your own agenda from the legacies left of religion, an imposed legal system, learned ways of exercising authority, exploitation, or social exclusion. But finally, in 2010, in the framework of our national plan, we established a domestic agenda intended to achieve social and economic growth. But the global agenda is set somewhere else. And for less developed countries like Honduras, priorities still reside in more basic needs as health, as education, and this sometimes is misinterpreted as lack of political will to engage in other current issues in the international community. A domestic agenda versus a global agenda. Before I talk about our limits on information technology, and you, of course, notice also, although I didn't read all those numbers, that the territorial extension of Honduras is quite small. So we are now working with the notion of virtual enlargement. Done successfully for some states like Singapore and the Vatican, which would be a form of soft power that defied territorial limitation. Okay. One of the ways to pursue that work of virtual enlargement, we see it as to work in 4 areas: cultural diplomacy, foreign policy, cultural diplomacy working in a positive country image, foreign policy still working in the same themes: human rights, advancement of democracy, regional integration, immigration systems, and of course cooperation. And everything to consolidate growth and development of our country. But we all know that usually cooperation is vertical. National agendas of small countries like Honduras are highly influenced by others, more powerful international actors that want to impose their own agenda. So we have designed a program which we intend to use as a way of sharing our success stories. And that is our South-South Cooperation Program. This is an instrument that allows us to exchange, as I said, our success stories. And we have quite a few for the development of national capacities. And we're thinking of this not only between states, central and local governments, but also between civil society organizations, universities, companies, associations, and individuals from developing countries. We have already presented our catalog of South-South cooperation within Central America, and we intend to do so next year through all our embassies in the world. This is composed of 2 elements. One, the strategic operative framework, and the other, the catalog that I was telling you about. And what we want is to be able to create horizontal association. And in these associations, cultural diplomacy is very much present. We truly believe what Pope John Paul II said, that nobody is so poor that he or she has nothing to give, and nobody is so rich that he or she has nothing to receive. And I hope and I think that the ICD can easily endorse my belief that no peace is thinkable as long as the world remains divided into groups: those who give and those who receive. Let's go very quickly through some conclusions. This was a study. Really, I had to study for this because this was not something that we have really thought that much about. But the soft power of Honduras through cultural diplomacy should come from the effective domestic implementation of our national plan and the use of international information strategies. We talk about this national plan because it's the first time in our history, as I said, that we have a long-term plan. This is something to go for the next 28 years, and that's something very important for a country like Honduras. Even the Mayas, and of course we come from them, they destroyed the buildings of the last king, started all over again. And probably we have been doing so in many of our administrations, not giving continuity and not having a long-term vision. So this is very important. To better exercise soft power, a small country like Honduras has to deepen the understanding of its founding story and its cultural identity. without cooperation allow us to balance the effects of vertical cooperation. As I said, we really are grateful, and it's a privilege to work with many great countries in the world that have been wonderfully generous to Honduras. But again, there are many things that we haven't done because cooperation was there. Probably we would be more sustainable today if we hadn't received indiscriminately all the foreign cooperation that we have had. The global agenda has a crowding out effect on national agendas, affects capacity to exert soft power. We need to work on multidimensional initiatives to raise international understanding on the most recent government efforts in the following areas: security, human rights, education, health, socially inclusive growth, environment, governance, transparency, and public administration. Our foreign policy has the challenge of adopting joint efforts and actions to promote the country's identity internationally and be coherent with the domestic guidelines towards consolidating Honduras, a Honduran identity, sorry. And we need to increase support for cultural activities through our diplomatic missions. The Honduran Foreign Service must give more emphasis to public diplomacy and to new communication tools, using, when possible, non-state actors. And finally, as I said before, we should pursue, and we are doing so already, the notion of virtual enlargement in terms of the country promotion. Probably most of you have heard of it, one way or the other. But on December 21st, the city of Copan in Honduras, as many other Mayan cities, will celebrate a landmark on the Mayan calendar. Some have referred to it as the end of the world, in catastrophic terms. However, the Mayan elders and worldwide scholars suggest that this date marks a time of transition from one world age to another. The message they give concerns our making a choice of how we enter the future ahead. We either resist or accept change. We either build peace or raise conflict. May I use this Mayan symbolism to invite you all to keep working in building international understanding and celebrating our common humanity. Thank you very much.